You know, we're rolling out the Amity project, we're rolling out the East-West connections, we're rolling out the whole raft of big projects. You know, if we keep cutting the cloth, something's got to give. So I just want to make sure, my key thing here today is, you know, we focus on, are we, you know, making sure that we're delivering and the local boards are engaged.
Thank you. Councillor Webster.
Yes, thank you. Of the positions that have been filled, were they filled from within people that have been working in communities, or were they new people coming in?
Through the chair. So probably just under 50% of the staff are new to the unit, but all of those people have, so a lot of the strategic brokers in particular are new, but they all have significant community experience, and a lot of them have prior council experience as well.
And with the Wellsford Library, the new Wellsford Library was opened about 4 years ago. That one's been sitting empty for quite some time. The community's been asking for something to be done. So you had finally a community consultation in December. So what's been done? Now it's March.
Through the chair. I'm sorry, I'd have to go and find that out and get back to you on that.
Maybe you could get back to me.
Sure.
Mr Chairman, I've always been very sceptical about this process, and interestingly enough to hear people talk about enabling council. We're supposed to be enabling communities. And like Councillor Watson, I get daily comments and phone calls from people who are just frustrated with this council, with they want to do things. You know, communities that have a fair to raise money to put some playground equipment into a playground, and they're told they have to hand it over to the council and the council will do it at enormous cost. You know, people who, I won't go into the details because there's too many of them, but you know, there is a frustration out there in my community that this council is all about bureaucracy, filling in forms and trying to get things put into a process that just takes ages. And these are communities who traditionally have done stuff for themselves. You know, they've gone out and they've put up the hoop for the kids to go and throw a ball at, and suddenly they're not allowed to do that anymore because they've got to go through a process and it's going to cost them $20,000. You know, and I'm sorry, and Mr Kimpton often gets texts and phone calls from me in the weekend because I can't go anywhere without someone having a go at me about the process of trying to get things done. So I just hope, but I will stay sceptical until those phone calls start going away.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And I just want to support my colleague from Rodney. I think that has been an ongoing theme of this council. However, I think we're kind of directing it at sort of the wrong people. These are the solution to our problem. So, Mr Chair, I've got a couple of issues to raise. I think, and it's great to hear everyone supporting community empowerment. It is a little bit back to the future. We did it well in some of the previous councils, and like, yay, we're thinking of doing it here now, and we've got good people to make it happen. Fantastic. But there's two things we need to focus on. I'm happy to support the recommendation, you know, that obviously we congratulate and we carry on, and I'm happy to second both of those. But I think we need to look at what Councillor Penrose is raising. It's a little bit like primary health care. You can keep doing the hip operations, but somewhere you actually need to be looking at, you know, what's causing the falls in the first place and people to break their hips. If you inject the money into public health, you actually get the results out of the end, but they take a while. I think we've kind of lost the plot here with some of our savings that we're pushing. We're actually going to defeat what we're asking for. So I'd like us to look in the annual plan very carefully at some of the cuts in this area. Secondly, genuine community empowerment actually relies on good partnership and trust. And the only way that we're going to get that to happen is if we actually trust our staff, and thank you, Member Wilcox, for raising what support is there for when our staff go out on limbs to work with community. Are we going to catch them and support them? And all the time we stay a little bit mired and I am loath to raise this because everything I seem to raise at the moment people are very keen to sort of shoot to death, so I won't pretend any ownership of this, I'll merely put it out there. Unless we look at genuinely supporting our staff and trusting the people involved in this area, we aren't going to make any progress with our community. They'll see straight through it, and if we don't let our staff work with those individual communities in ways that suit those individual communities, this will be doomed to fail. So, Mr. Chair, I think we need to show a little bit of leadership around this table and working in partnership with our staff if we are genuinely going to partner with our community. Because at the moment, the cynicism that exists out there is in our community's trust that we can genuinely deliver this. So, you know, we can speak the words, but let's actually do the deeds.
Thank you. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, can I just,
Oh, sorry.
I didn't read to the end of my notes. My point was, genuine example, last night Councillor Cooper and I went to the Have Your Say event at in Henderson, hosted by the McLaren Park group, MPHS. There was only a few members of the public. The MPHS group hold and are funded to hold community events throughout the West on a regular basis. They were told they weren't allowed to just hook the Have Your Say onto the bouncy council events, the sausage sizzle events. What kind of organisation have we where they're not allowed to? We could have had 200 people in the middle of Hendo if we'd allowed this community group to organise it. Instead, they're told they're not allowed to do that. So somewhere we've got this extraordinary, the heart of the organisation, being told by some bizarre part of the organisation, you know, maybe it's one sort of person in the organisation saying we're not allowed to because it's not fit for purpose. So, to allow that person to feel safe and protected, that they can have a more imaginative approach, we need to say we trust our senior staff, we will back you to the hilt if you are varying process, come and talk to us about it and we have your back. Until we do that, Mr. Chair, we're going to keep having the people arse covering and too shit scared to do anything different because they're going to be leapt on from a great height by us around this table.
That's right.
It's in our hands whether we make this happen or not.
Thank you. Wayne Walker.
Sure. Just like to float a couple of concerns, and I've mentioned them before. One is that we're taking a significant amount of money out of this area, a very large amount of money relative to what was in the pool before. And we've obviously eliminated quite a large number of very good staff that had a great deal of corporate knowledge that were working in this area. I think most of them have gone. So, and I continue to be quite upset by the number of good people that I see leave this organisation, either because they're forced out or because they decide to jump ship for a variety of reasons. If I look at the evaluation, and from what I read, I don't have a really good handle on what we're evaluating. Quite obviously, what we're doing is placing an ever-increasing amount of emphasis on the community, on clubs, associations, community groups, individuals who I see are increasingly under stress across Auckland for a whole variety of reasons. Affordable housing is just part of it, but cuts in grants, cuts in money across the board for organisations are really cutting deep. So that is the reality. I think that as much and all as we evaluate outcomes, we need to also be evaluating the health of the community organisations that are working in this area, because if that is the overall measure of success, then we really need to get some feedback. The other thing that concerns me, and I mentioned it before, is the loss of corporate knowledge. I would hope that we've got some mechanisms for having an appreciation of what is going on across this area, all the more so because we're devolving it to the community. And is that going to be sustainable? Because often organisations come and go. We know that there are a number of organisations, and they come to us on an ongoing basis, that are in dire predicaments in terms of their survival through lack of funding. and difficult at getting volunteers and so on. So I've got a question around the evaluation framework and what it is covering off in order for us to accurately measure success across Auckland.
Through the chair. So we're still in the process of finalising the evaluation framework, but essentially it's a 3-year evaluation, so it's looking at is the empowered communities approach actually working and making a difference. I think a key part of the empowered communities approach is capacity building with community groups. So you're absolutely right what you say, and there's a big role for us in supporting those groups and continuing that support until they feel ready to, take this up on their own.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I just want to follow on from what Councillor Hulse was saying, because when we have processes outside community, outside of ACE, that disempower people, for example, there was a woman there talking about should we give money to outside organisations to do this work, and this woman was bagging the organisation that was hosting. She said, look, they've got about hardly any people here, they're terrible, you should be really down on them, you should have a councillor or a staff member sitting at every board meeting and making sure they're doing it and all this. And so we talked to the actual manager at tea, and she just said exactly what she said. I just don't understand, we could have had so many people, we weren't allowed to, so the people running that would have been local board services and somebody else, I imagine. And so what I don't get is that we've got community empowerment, but we've got other parts of council disempowering our communities. And I thought that this was about the staff in this new unit being the portal to supporting people through our funny process that undermine a whole lot of other things we do. And so for me, here you had the community begging this organisation, but the organisation wasn't allowed to do what it's paid to do, which is a couple $100,000 a year, and they can't do it. So you're giving them the money, and then you're saying we don't trust you, and this is ridiculous. So for me, that's really important, because it looks like it just makes council look silly, and it doesn't allow the leaders in that community to get on with what they're really good at, and the whole reason why we pulled out of having council staff in that kind of role. So for me, a lot of this is maybe not even about spending more money. We can still make the savings, but let's get, out of our silos, because a lot of these complaints are around parks processes, around things we've got there, around consents, around all this traffic management plans. It's not actually the community empowerment unit that is stuffing it up. It's actually our other units, and not purposely, just because we've got certain legislation we have to comply with, health and safety, blah, blah, blah. That means that people who want to do stuff and be leaders in their own community can't do it because it's too costly in time and money. And people just look at it and go, I don't get it. So the good thing is, I just see, and last night too, a woman said, oh, I've got the voucher for the Neighbours' Day from the local board, so that's a really good community empowerment. She's having a great event for the Te Aratu Peninsula community, for the people around, and she lives in the street and Madam Chian was murdered. So that's a response to let's get people together. So that's working really well, but the thing like having to book your local park, can't you just go to your local park and set up a tent for the local people and go, hey, we're just here, and anybody can come, So I just think sometimes we've got it so hard for people, so we're not empowering people. So I don't think it's anyone's fault. I just think it's a damn good look at how do the ACE people work with the park people, work with the traffic management and all that stuff to make things easy, because that's what Councillor Webster's talking about.
Kimpton,
So, yeah.
I thought that's what
So there's a few things raised. What I'd like to do is just wind the clock back maybe a couple of years, and one of the reasons for redesigning this unit along the lines of community empowerment, was we recognised there was an issue, and I think it was a function of bringing 8 organisations together and us sorting out how we were going to support communities. So we lost some of the good stuff, and now we're looking at how we bring that back, and that's a very simple summary, I think, of past and